Phyllis followed close, and together the two cars moved with great bulk and equally moderate speed from the heart of the quarter to its far edge at Canal Street. Royal Street was virtually empty, as it commonly is after regular business hours, and the darkened antique shops served as refractory mirrors as we rolled by aglow with running lights and reflections from street lamps, like a cubist motion picture, with size, shape, and angle of reflection changing with each glass front door and angled window. Windows right on the sidewalk, doors farther in, slanted windows on either sides of doors, showing images just ahead of you and just behind. At cross streets, the movie goes blank like an old movie in between reels, but returns in a beat with the shops and boutiques on the next block. At 2 in the morning, the CBD, the Central Business District, is pitch dark, save for the odd string of street lamps. We rolled through the tall, modern, boom-time streets as through a ghost town. The hotels are doing business, but at 2 in the morning, most hotel guests are either asleep, gambling down at the river, or else drinking Hurricanes and $4 Budweisers back on Rue Bourbon. We drove up St. Charles to Robert E. Lee Circle and followed Tony around it, under the West Bank Expressway and on into the lower Garden District. At St. Mary Street, Tony steered a left over the streetcar tracks, a left back onto St. Charles, and then a right at the traffic light by the First NBC Bank. At Britannia, the side street turned cobblestone, and we continued on to Magazine. At Magazine, the Cadillac turned right, and then right again 1 block later. The curb was empty, and we pulled up right behind Tony. His lights went off, and Phyllis turned off the Chrysler. Half Moon, said Phyllis. On the sidewalk, Tony explained to all three of us that this wasn't our final destination, but that he thought we should stop in for a pop. So we did, without discussion. Unlike the streets outside it, the Half Moon bar was crowded. Rock stars, bikers, gallery types, and drunk college kids from Tulane. All stools at the bar were taken, all 4 pool tables were taken, and most of the tables and chairs. Tony grabbed 2 beers in each hand and handed them out. These should tie us over, he said, the way a camp leader might hand out bags of trail mix. Sensing group fatigue, or else just waning enthusiasm, Tony became self-conscious and downplayed the new beers. Here, we'll take these with us, he suggested. He knew he'd been given this night of throwback touring, and he didn't want to screw it up. Leaving the bar, Carol looked a little weary, but by the curb smiled mischievously to Phyllis. Whether mischievously for Phyllis's sake or her own wasn't clear. It didn't matter. If Carol was still touring, we were still touring. In a minute, we were back on the road, back en route, as Tony promised, to our final surprise stop. Somewhere along the way, Phyllis and I had developed an unspoken understanding. We both felt we owed something to Carol and measured our interest in Tony for the night with borrowed units of our own interest. If she wanted to look at all the positive in Tony and let whatever negative there was slide by the wayside, then we would too. Why not? We took a right onto Camp Street where it starts, and then the first right at the traffic light, at the house with the marble bovines, standing guard on the porch steps like Creole lions. We took a right on Magazine again, but this time continued on straight. Straight west, all the way uptown, past Jackson, past Washington, past Louisiana, past Napoleon, Jefferson, Nashville. Magazine, like Royal Street and the CBD, was quiet and dark. The only activity was by the old A&P supermarket. Cars parking and leaving, and the related foot traffic for a couple of busy college bars. At Audubon and the zoo, under a long, tunneling canopy of live oaks, Tony opened it up. The Cadillac pulled away, and Phyllis let them go. At River Road, they would have to slow down for the turn, and we would catch them then. Besides, Phyllis added, I think I know where he's going. As predicted, Tony slowed the Cadillac up ahead in the distance and turned right onto River Road, the double R. When we reached the spot where Carrollton dead ends at Riverbend, we were back on their bumper, and Phyllis again repeated that she knew where Tony was going, and then added that she was surprised he was taking us out so far. "It's called the River Shack," explained Phyllis. "What's so special about it?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Well, nothing. But I guess that's kind of the point. What was special about the other places? It's just a place we used to go sometimes. At the intersection uptown where River Road runs into the end of Oak Street is a triangle. Coming from Riverbend, there is a stop sign and an obligatory right turn leading to another stop sign. Then to continue along the river, you have to take a left over the railroad tracks to get back on the double R. At the first stop sign, the road is parallel to the tracks. At Oak Street, the railroad tracks turn right away from the river and cross the road. At the first stop sign, the Cadillac and Chrysler were together. And next to the Caravan was an old engine and caboose on the tracks. The engine was moving, pulling the caboose at a crawl, and propelling itself very slowly out onto the section of track that crosses a small roadway triangle. Because of the darkness, the moving train was eerie and a bit disorienting. Our Caravan bore right to the next stop sign, then left up to the red X's and railroad warning lights. At first, not connecting the slow movement of the locomotive with the flashing of the railroad lights, I wondered why the gate was coming down. Tony, similarly confused perhaps, but then much more impatient, realized what was happening and didn't want to be held up. Despite very clearly audible disapproval from Carol, Tony drove the Cadillac forward and rounded the red and white candy-striped gate as it dropped into position. In reality, this was not a high-risk move. It was clear that there were no speeding trains nearby, and that the 1 mile-an-hour speed of the caboose and engine 40 yards away did not pose a serious threat. It was moving at a slower than walking pace, and was a good distance from the crossing. Tony's move was not technically risky, but it was an arguably poor decision for other reasons. A poor example to set, not to mention inconsiderate Caravan leadership. And it was lucky that no cars coming from farther upriver had decided to do the same thing simultaneously. The path was clear, and Tony took the Cadillac in a smooth, if bouncy S-turn slowly around the barriers. That jerk-off. Phyllis pushed the shifter on the Chrysler steering column into park and waited for the engine and caboose. First to slowly approach, and then to slowly pass. The complete passing of the train, including the time spent waiting for the gate to go back up, took more than 4 minutes. When the hulking black iron bull was safely off the road, and in no danger of getting broadsided by a speeding car, the candy-striped stick went up and Phyllis pulled forward and bumped us across the tracks. In another 100 yards, she followed the double R gently to the right toward the horse riding facility and entered Jefferson Parish. It was right around 2:30 in the morning. At 2:33 or 4, we saw the Cadillac.